Many years ago, I was fishing on a remote lake in the Amazon when I saw something so bizarre, I doubted my own eyes.
It was just a brief flash as it broke the surface, a huge pink body with a jagged row of points along its back.
When I made inquiries, the locals said that nothing like this lived in their lake. Frankly, they thought I'd been drinking too much.
So had my eyes played a trick on me? Well, a year later I went back, and by sheer chance I managed to photograph this mysterious beast. Only later would I find out what it was, but just seeing it and then getting photographic proof of its existence had a profound effect on me. It's why I don't automatically dismiss other fishermen's tales. In fact, no matter how strange they sound, many are shockingly true.
Swallowed alive. It's one of the most outlandish tales I've ever heard. Yet it's one I've heard several times from different people in different places.
Basically, there's a bit of a frenzy of fishing activity going on. One of the nets got stuck on a rock, and in that situation, you've got to go down and get it off. So this one fisherman dived in to free the net. However, what happened was that, you know, he didn't come up.
Uma média de 4 horas.
De 4 horas?
4 horas pela boia com ele.
Nothing more was seen until about 4 hours later, when suddenly this huge fish appeared on the surface, and it was thrashing around because the fish was actually itself in trouble, actually choking. The fisherman was actually half inside the mouth of the fish, just the legs of the fisherman sticking out. They got it in and clubbed it to death. They left his body inside the fish and then went to Manaus as fast as possible. Obviously, you know, get it to the police station to make sure that there's no suspicion that it was a case of murder or anything like that.
Could this yarn really be true? Or is it just a made-up fisherman's tale, no more real than this photo recreation?
Surely no creature would be so greedy that it would choke itself to death.
The monster that allegedly tried to swallow the man was identified as a predatory catfish, the Piraiba.
So that fish could have been about 500 pounds. I mean, we are talking some seriously, seriously big fish here. The mouth, about 40 centimetres across, so that's a couple of foot across, but he says it, you know, it opens up more, so sort of maybe 2.5 foot. This was a pretty monstrous fish and a pretty horrific end for that particular fisherman. He says there are people disappearing all the time, and you never find a trace of them. You know, you don't find the body, you don't find bones, you don't find anything.
To swallow a man whole, a fish would have to be huge. But are there such monsters in the Amazon? It sounds extreme, yet I've caught fish from other rivers that really do reach man-eating dimensions.
They do exist, the gunch do exist.
Unlike the mostly harmless fish of the US, some in the Amazon are known to be gruesome killers. The shark-like Piraiba in particular has a reputation for both size and aggression.
This catch was reported to be nearly 8 foot long and some 350 pounds. But maybe there are even bigger monsters out there.
And I think I know just the place to find a giant Piraiba.
This is it. This is the meeting of the waters. This is the black water of the Rio Negro coming down here, mixing with the white, muddy water of the Rio Solimões, and together they form the mighty Amazon. And this has to be probably the biggest river junction in the world, and everybody says that the big catfish, they love river junctions, so this place has to be a good bet for the mother of all catfish.
To better my odds, I'm hoping to learn from a Piraiba guru. Giulio Cavalcanti once caught a 211-pound Piraiba at the meeting of the waters. But on another occasion, he nearly died here, when his line wrapped around his body and almost pulled him out of the boat. He had to cut himself free with this very knife. Giulio credits his fishing success to a secret bait formula that he wraps around a hook, seals in a tin can, and leaves to bake in the sun for 3 days.
Oh. Oh dear. Ah. I think most of the fish in this river are going to know that stuff is in there.
Look here.
Right. That. That just looks so. Oh. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Mas é muito boa. O peixe gosta demais.
Right. The fish like it. The fish like it. This is the guts, the byproducts of 8 chickens. So the entire intestines of one chicken is about that long, wound round, and you've got 8 entire intestinal tracts of chickens to make up that bait. I think with this now, I have to be ready to go fishing.
Julia reckons that once the sun sets and night falls, the big catfish will come out to feed.
That's the bait on a huge hook, lump of lead to keep it down. I'll feed this over the side. I've got 30 foot of iron cable. Feels good, the monsters could be on the move. How's this for float fishing? I've got a barrel on here. I mean, this is a Jaws moment if ever there was one. The bait's out, the engine's cut. It's now just a case of being quiet and just drifting down with the current.
But being out here after dark also increases the risks.
Here you've not only got a very, very powerful fish that might hang on the end of the line, you've also got to keep an eye out for the weather. And also, this is a very, very busy waterway. There's going to be boats, big barges, all sorts of stuff, and they'll just run you over if you give them a chance, if you don't get out of the way. And 30 foot below all that is my bait.
The water underneath me could be 200 feet deep, but the Piraiba, whose name means mother of all the fishes, is totally at home here. With a lightning-conducting rod in my hands, I'm easily the highest point in this wide stretch of river. Reluctantly, I decide to call it a day before the storm gets any closer.
Well, nothing came for that bait. And I don't know, maybe I can't blame them. Either it's just not my night, or the fact that it is so close to a big city means that the fish have all been fished out. You know, there is a huge fishing fleet operating from Manaus, and this is right on the doorstep. Perhaps, you know, I need to go further away from civilization if I'm to get the mother of all the catfish.
In a more remote region of the Amazon, I head up a tributary of the main river, hoping that my luck is going to change. No sooner have I cast into the water when my guide Flavio spots a truly graphic example of over-ambitious predation. Something that immediately reminds me of the Piraiba that tried to swallow a man.
We've just seen this Payara floating down the river, quite a big one, still alive. We thought it was dead to start with. On investigation, it's got another one down its throat, and Flavio's just grabbing hold of the tail of it and pulling it out. Here we go. Look at that, here's the tail of another fish.
Again for me.
So this fish almost choked to death on something just, you know, too big to swallow, really. If we can get the other fish out, it might survive, but as it is... Good grief! Size of that. Look at that! Just look at...
Oh, loco!
Good grief! Look at the size of the fish that other fish swallowed. So that's the meal, the one that's looking slightly worse for wear. And this is the greedy one that swallowed it, which might now recover.
maybe in murky water, biting off more than you can chew is a common occurrence. Spurred on by this chance encounter, I seek out a deep channel with fast-flowing water, the kind of place where a man-sized piraiba might be lurking.
Just trying a different spot here. I've had a few fish recently that have taken the bait and I just haven't hooked up, or they've come off. Oh! It's come off. So what I'm doing, I'm trying something a little bit clever. I'm putting a double hook rig on so it doesn't have to take the entire bait, even if it just nips the tail of it or the body of it. I should hook up, get a good hook hold.
The piraiba is a streamlined fish with a thick leather-like hide, renowned for its enormous strength.
Awesome. Something down there. Just grab the bait, bend the rod, and then let go. That is a fish on. I think it's coming towards me. What I don't want is the hook to come out like it has been doing. There are people who hook these fish and they're literally on for hours and it gets dark and they give up and they cut the line. This is a big fish. Strong, strong, strong fish, strong fish, strong fish. Ah!
After a long struggle, the fish begins to tire.
There it is, that's the fish, there's the fish! There's the fish! Piraiba, it's a piraiba. Ah! Here we go. This is the one I wanted. This is the piraiba, the real monster of the Amazon. Fish is growling at me. Oh, big old mouth on there. Heavy, heavy fish. I can hardly hold this up. My arms are pretty shot anyway. No, I can feel the fish flexing. It's about to kick. Whoa. Oops. And this is the one that people say, when it gets big enough, it goes after people as well. Looks a bit like a shark, and it has a reputation to match. This is a big one, but they do go bigger. They do go bigger. This one, possibly about 80 pounds. I mean, you know, this is a man-sized fish. But they go bigger than man size. They go a size big enough to swallow a man. That's a lovely, lovely result.
This predator can grow to around 10 feet in length. According to Theodore Roosevelt, who travelled through this region 100 years ago, people then were more afraid of it than they were of caimans.
Oh. And he's gone. What a river monster.
Fish don't usually try to swallow oversized food items, but they do occasionally make mistakes. I'm inclined to believe the story of a piraiba that choked on a man. Others, however, I find harder to swallow.
Tales of raining fish in particular sounded a shade too X-Files.
Until I took a boat ride up the Illinois River.
My skipper works for the US government and really does investigate aliens.
What's the idea behind the net?
This gives one little bit of defense for the driver as trying to protect himself.
Okay, and what happened there?
Occasionally we get such large ones that come up into the net with such force that they'll actually blow a hole right through it.
America's Illinois River may appear completely normal, yet I've been warned that at any moment it could erupt and literally bombard me with fish. Swarming just below the surface is the mother of all alien invasions.
Just absolutely full of fish down here. Nice flat, calm surface, but there's loads of them down there.
It's the noise of our engine as we accelerate that triggers them to break cover. These are silver carp, and they produce one of the most surreal spectacles I've ever seen.
There's up to 13 tons of these fish for every mile in the river. And that's hundreds of miles. They go all the way down the Mississippi. Seeing these as dots on the sonar is one thing, but just the noise of our motor provokes this mass escape response.
Brought here from China 40 years ago, these fish were never meant to escape into the wild. Today, they are a plague.
Absolutely stiff with fish. Here we go, look at this. There's more silver than green in the water there. I actually feel the boat being buffeted as they bang into it.
This freak phenomenon is the closest thing to raining fish I've ever experienced.
Whoops. So who needs a rod? These things just jump into the boat.
The Illinois River is overrun by a fish that is well equipped to dominate the local species, yet on a global scale, even carp are totally outnumbered by another, much larger family. Catfish thrive on every continent except Antarctica, and they come in a spectacular variety of shapes and sizes.
I'm just starting to see some of the weird and wonderful fish that they got in this river.
Their barbels or whiskers make them easy to spot, but you need to be wary.
And if one of those was to grab you, there's not a great deal you could do about it.
They've evolved an array of unconventional weapons. From bolts of electricity to pop-up spines, which, believe me, are the devil to pull out.
I got one of these spines here stuck in that finger when I was fishing the Congo, and it went right up the entire length, and it's one of the most painful things I've ever experienced in my life.
But perhaps the strangest and nastiest members of this varied family are those that live in South America.
In the vaults of Brazil's National Institute of Amazonian Research, Dr. Lucia Rapp shows me some of her more extreme specimens.
It's a kind of armored catfish.
It's like out of a horror movie or something from outer space. I mean, you wouldn't believe this could be a fish, but I mean, you know, there is just such diversity.
So this kind of fish, in fact, it grazes on wood. It's a beautiful one.
Oh, look at that.
It's another kind of catfish.
I'm still marveling at these oddballs when Lucia tells me a strange and sinister tale.
We had a situation here recently. We received a visit of a doctor. He came with some images of two corpses, two men. He believed that they were shot because they have those very round holes on the body.
The case had all the hallmarks of a gangland murder, except for one chilling detail that the doctor uncovered.
He started to dissect the corpse. He saw that the corpse were hollowed already inside without any organs.
So who or what could possibly be responsible for a bullet-riddled corpse stripped of its internal organs? The Amazon River in Brazil is known for containing a horrifying collection of murderous beasts. Nearly all of them leave distinctive marks on their victims. But there's nothing in the textbooks to help pathologist Dr. Elizabeth Becerra when she examines a hollowed-out corpse, seemingly riddled with gunshot wounds. All she finds inside are a couple of fish. The species is duly identified as a Candiru asu. This unusual catfish is a voracious flesh-eater that invades dead or dying animals, entering either through the victim's anus or by cutting a small circular hole through its skin.
And there wasn't any kind of bullet or something inside the corpse, just the fishes. So the fishes got inside the bodies and eaten the organs inside.
Would they have been dead when the fish got in?
Well, they suspect that the men might be even alive and they were eaten from the inside. And they probably died from that, right? If you feel
Yeah.
the fish, you
Yeah.
can just remove it.
Yes.
But if you are, for example, drunk or ill or something, you may not have enough strength to resist to them. Imagine a whole bunch of these fishes attacking you at
Yes,
once.
not a very pleasant thought if you're going for a little swim in the Amazon.
At the morgue, Dr. Elizabeth Bezerra paints a disturbing picture.
E são destruídos, literalmente esqueletizados pela essa fauna.
Apparently Mondays are the worst days for bodies coming in this state. People go out picnics, having a drink on the weekend, they fall in the water, they disappear, and then Mondays the bodies come to the surface. We're not just talking about one or two animals. The most that Dr. Elizabeth has actually taken from a corpse or found inside is more than 100 of these fish.
These are actual photographs from the morgue, showing what look like gunshot entry wounds, in some cases with the fish still inside the human corpse.
The body is literally eaten from the inside, just the bones and some skin remains. The thought of maybe more than 100 of these boring into a human body, I mean, they really are flesh-eating monsters.
I'm strangely attracted to this repellent fish. I'm curious to see a live one in action. Jumping into the water isn't usually something I balk at if it means I get to see my fish. But when it comes to these tiny terrors, I'm taking no chances. After a couple of hours, I decide to check the corpse.
Oh, what was that?
I don't know the scientific names for all the scavengers at this gruesome picnic.
And that is just disgusting. That is horrible, whatever it is. I hate... it is one of the grossest sensations I think I've ever had. I quite like fish, but I don't like this one. There's little sort of lighter bits of material in there, and I think what's actually happening, the shock of these things being pulled out, they're actually regurgitating bits of flesh into the water.
Then, hidden in the writhing mass, I spot the vile monster I'm after.
There, just hold him. There we go. So this is the Candiru asu. This is the fish that bores holes in the body and then devours from the inside out. This was a heavy fish when it went in. Nothing left inside. In fact, if I'll just rip it open a little bit.
The Candiru asu makes no distinction between human flesh and that of any other animal floating in the Amazon.
Just like a hollow case of skin with the remnants of the bone inside. This is almost exactly, what the autopsy report was in the morgue, except, in that case we were talking about a human being.
When I dangle some dessert, the Candiru swarm all over it, gripping the skin with their teeth, then twisting off mouthfuls by spinning their bodies.
I might try and lift them out, actually. I might just try and lift... Look at that. Hey, there's one there. These things will give you a bite just like a piranha. Look at that. That's very, very definite cut. And this is all the work of the Candiru.
So far, hollowed-out corpses are only found in the Amazon. But I recently received an email from a viewer who said he'd seen these same flesh-eating Candiru for sale at a pet store in Florida. By all accounts, you have to be unconscious before these nightmare creatures start drilling into your body. But there's another kind of catfish which is, if anything, even more horrific. In fact, this is one of the most infamous legends ever to emerge from the Amazon. Supposedly, a man is urinating in a river when suddenly something swims up his penis.
It's the kind of story that you push to the back of your mind, hoping that it just isn't true. But while filming for river monsters in Brazil, I stumbled on something that dragged it back out of my subconscious and got me wondering.
Fish on! Look at that! My goodness. This is a good size. This is a very good size. Oh.
An 80-pound red-tailed catfish is an exceptional catch for the cameras. However, it's the creepy bloodsuckers inside its mouth that soon grab my attention.
Another one here. And that is absolutely engorged with blood, the blood of this poor catfish.
Believe it or not, these revolting parasites are also catfish, distant cousins of their much larger victim.
This is pretty disgusting. I don't know if I can get hold of it because they're very slippery. Need more fingernails. Okay, look, there we go. So there we go, before and after. This one's fed. This one's still lean and hungry.
Also known as a candiru, this blood feeder is distinct from its fatter flesh-eating cousin that bores into flesh. But, vile as it is, would this little vampire actually swim up a man's private parts? It sounds a bit of a stretch. And yet I eventually track down Silvio Barbosa, who claims that one of these fish has indeed assaulted him in the most intimate of places. He takes me to the very spot where he says a fish swam up his manhood.
Essa aqui tá meio alagada.
Ah, tá vendo. Sem motor. It's 11 years ago. It's in this very spot. Silvio and some friends were in the water down there.
Ele me deu uma dose de...
And after a little period of time, Silvio felt the need to urinate. He knew the story about the candiru, so he actually sort of took himself partially out of the water.
Já foi na hora que eu...
While he was relieving himself, suddenly he said, you know, he just had a bit of a shock. And, you know, the first thing he knew was that the fish was already inside, just the end of its tail was out.
Fora batendo, que eu tentei agarrar, mas não deu.
Tried to grab hold of it, but it's a very smooth fish, a bit like a bar of soap. No good, you know, no success pulling it out, so basically just ran up onto the bank to try and get some help.
Silvio sounds genuine, so I decide to throw a net out to see if I can catch one of these fish.
This is almost exactly what Silvio described, you know, something going in one direction and just not wanting to come into reverse at all.
So far, the story is holding up.
This fish is just leaking blood. It's not this fish's blood, it's something it's been feeding on. And it is just an absolute nightmare, you know, a real sort of vampire fish, this thing. It was actually walking using its head. Now imagine that in an orifice.
When Silvio gets to a hospital, no one believes his account. And I too still have a grain of doubt. This is so off the wall that I need to dig deeper. Retracing Silvio's footsteps, I head to see Dr. Anwar Samad, the urologist who apparently dealt with this unusual case.
He'd actually had this fish inside him for 4 days. The fish wasn't visible. It's got these little sort of spines on the gill flaps, so it was almost like working its way in like that. It would have swum as far as the sphincter, at which point the fish was apparently trying to sort of, you know, gnaw its way out.
This parasite normally drinks blood from the gills of a much larger fish, homing in on its victim by following a trail of waste chemicals, including urea. But urea also occurs in human urine, which could explain the candiru's mistake. To save Silvio from an agonizing death, Dr. Samad now embarks on an unprecedented medical procedure.
The endoscope was put in the end of his penis into the urethra.
The equipment is mounted with a camera, providing live footage of the operation.
The first thought was to pull the fish out head first, but he thought that because the fish was starting to rot a bit, maybe try and pull it out with the endoscope, you know, out tail first, the way that it went in. The pincers were gradually manipulated out of the hole here, grabbed hold of the fish just in front of the tail, and then the whole apparatus just gradually, very delicately moved out.
Se aquela força é o suficiente para o peixe vir, sem cortar, sem partir, sem danificar.
Apparently it was necessary to pull with a certain amount of force, but feeling that it's not doing any damage, unfortunately, you know, it did come out eventually.
The critter was sent to the National Institute of Amazonian Research to be formally identified. At the time, Silvio barely glimpsed his attacker. He has never had a good look at it, until now.
This is a somewhat momentous and possibly delicate occasion. I'm bringing Silvio back to meet his fish. This one. Silvio, esse aqui?
Canheiro.
Quer pegar assim?
Não, não, não.
That's it. I just asked Silvio if he would like to handle it, and very definite no. I think once was enough. So maybe if I leave it in my hand. But I'm quite struck by how large it is. É grande, né? Não é peixinho, mas é
grande ele. Eu pensei que era menor. Eu só via de dentro desse vidro quando o doutor já me mostrou quando eu estava.
You know, he's looking at it now, thinking, you know, I didn't realise it was that big. I thought it was smaller.
At 5 inches long and nearly half an inch thick, this is the myth made flesh.
It really does beg a belief that something of that size could burrow into you.
When I asked Dr. Samad how painful it must have been for Silvio, he told me, this is a man who has already paid for all his sins in this life and the next. If some fish really are guilty of bizarre acts, for others it's enough just to appear strange. And if your looks frighten the locals, you can forget about a fair trial.
Wherever we have alligator gar, there are myths of monsters.
In the muddy backwaters of America's deep south lurks a beast with seemingly supernatural powers.
Allegedly bulletproof, it is a fish that can breathe air.
As well as producing eggs that are poisonous to humans, it has spawned some of the wildest tales I've ever heard.
If you should emerge from swimming and you find out that you have a limb missing, it is probably the alligator gar that did it.
In 1932, on a warm spring day, schoolgirl Elizabeth Granger and her brother George run down to the edge of a lake.
Oh, darn it, you won! Thank you.
Sitting on the shore, Elizabeth cools her feet in the water. Suddenly, she's grabbed by something big that sinks its teeth into her. Dr. Robert Payne has worked as a physician for almost 40 years. But he has never seen wounds like this. The girl's flesh is disfigured with multiple puncture holes. The only fish in these waters equipped to do that kind of damage is the alligator gar. According to George, the one that grabbed his sister was around 7 feet long. But this is a beast reputed to reach 10 feet from end to end. Behind its tooth-studded snout, the gator gar is encased in thick, bony scales that are coated with an ultra-hard, enamel-like substance. I don't know about bullets bouncing off, but you might need an axe to cut one open. A further peculiarity is its double row of dagger-like teeth along the upper jaw. And this is no ordinary jaw. It can actually expand, allowing the gar to engulf a larger than normal mouthful. Perhaps its oddest trick, though, is breathing air. Its swim bladder doubles up as a primitive lung, enabling it to survive even in stagnant water. So far, so strange. But I've yet to get my hands on a gator gar and see for myself how much of a river monster it really is. I choose a large baitfish, one that I judge only a man-sized gar could handle.
Okay. It's a bit of a battle of nerves, this. Something's taken off. It's on the end. Right, it's going to be very soon. Oh, I think it's off. Oh, no, no, no. No, no.
It's coming toward us.
But it seems I'm guilty of underestimating my quarry. Even the small gator gar on the end of my line has tried to swallow a mouthful almost as big as its own head.
Look at that greedy thing. Ah.
Maybe those reports of torn and ripped limbs are not so far-fetched. In the boat, the gar's double row of teeth is clearly visible. It's sobering to think that these close-packed spikes could eventually reach an inch in length.
Oh my God, you got bit, huh? Score 1 for the fish.
That's twice I've underestimated this animal. Mess with even a small gator gar, and it seems there will be blood.
Okay, back you go. Good battle scars.
It did, didn't it? But you can see the sort of the cut on it.
The consequences, if this fish was scaled up to a monstrous 8 to 10 feet, are beginning to hit home. Long before Elizabeth Granger was mauled, the odd-looking gator gar was accused of attacking humans and singled out for persecution. In 1933, the Texas Game Fish Commission unveiled its solution to the problem: the all-new electrical gar destroyer. On its maiden voyage, this shocking device fried 75 gator gar and 1,000 turtles. Over the next 3 decades, millions more gar are exterminated, and right across America, this hated outlaw is run out of town. At Lake Livingston on the Trinity River in Texas, I seek out legendary fisherman Bobby Fly for some clues on how to find a giant specimen. He caught one 7 feet long that put him in the Hall of Fame, and he believes there are still big gar around on the Trinity.
You ain't got to move your boat 100 yards one way or the other to catch good garfish right there. Now, I have seen one 14 foot long down there, garfish.
Oh, really?
And I was tied up in the top of a willow tree with a 14-foot flat bottom, and this bad boy come right up beside me and just surfaced right there. And I seen the front of my boat and the back of my boat, and I seen fish all the way. So I immediately pulled up the slack, undone my rope, and went on to the house. I didn't hang around.
But this sighting was in 1987, and his big catch was landed 20 years ago. Other anglers have pulled out large specimens, but no fish over 8.5 feet in length has been caught in the last decade. The big question is, are there still any gar large enough to commit the attacks they've been accused of?
All I've got to do now is go out and try and get something similar size. Something close to that will make me happy, I think. I'll be,
Well, you will.
yeah.
You will. There's some big ones out there.
Yeah.
You go down there where I told you to go. You'll be all right.
With Bobby Fly's optimism still ringing in my ears, I resume my search and find what looks like a perfect backwater for one of these strange giants.
That was definitely a fish moving off. For sure.
Not a damn thing.
This is actually very, very frustrating fishing. I mean, something definitely had that in its mouth because it moved it several yards. But when I tighten down, there's nothing there. And really, you know, just talking to people who fish here, I mean, there's not much that anybody's told me that's any use. I mean, very few people fish for these. Bobby Fly caught his by accident. And the fishing that is done on rod and line is pretty basic. You know, it does work. It's a fairly low percentage success rate. You chuck out a lump of dead fish like this and you wait and you let it take it for a long time. And most times you tighten down, there's nothing on the end. But you know, sometimes there is, and it hasn't really got any more sophisticated than that. But that was another half hour with nothing to show at the end of it.
But focused on my target, I fish on, towards dusk.
What do you reckon? Tighten down?
Well,
Right.
it's really couldn't hurt.
Couldn't hurt. Okay. That's gone up. It's gone up again. Okay.
Set it. There we go.
That's a fish. Ain't no tell.
Oh, yes! Yes!
Oh, it's pulling down,
Look at that rod tip.
Let's get him up,
The local lasso method for boating a large gar can be hazardous for fish and angler alike.
Do you want me to?
Never mind the teeth, its scales have such sharp points they were once used as arrowheads. In the fading light, I finally set eyes on this strange-looking beast.
Oh, there we go.
That's what we wanted.
That's exactly what we wanted.
That is exactly what we wanted. That's a proper size fish.
This fish is almost 7 feet long.
Okay. We got the gaff handle?
Yes.
All right. So this will go in here. Okay.
I've already been bloodied once by a gar with much smaller teeth than this one.
I think it's 123 pounds. Good. This is fantastic. I mean, this is the creature that I came here to see.
Its armour plating is like nothing I've ever felt. And when it suddenly takes a gulp of air, its jaws also do something strange.
Oh, here we go, there we go. Well, that was interesting. When it just did that, the whole upper jaw sort of expanded.
You can actually see the gaps where there's actually flesh in between, and the head's allowed to expand.
Oh,
see how it's doing? Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Then, once again, the gar draws blood.
That's not actually the teeth of the animal, that is the back of a scale. The fish just slid back, and sliding that way is fine. Sliding this way, the rear points of these triangular scales stuck in. The alligator gar is nowhere near as vicious as it looks, but being a fish that breathes air surely marks it out as an unusual beast. Or does it?
From belching arapaima to these bubble-blowing baby snakeheads, fish from many different families have evolved a crude ability to breathe air.
They're coming up to the air, they're blowing out the spent air and taking another gulp. They are really, really tolerant to low oxygen levels.
Most fish suffocate in stagnant water, but those equipped with a primitive lung can survive by taking occasional gulps from the surface.
It belched out a little bit of air, and then there was took some air in, and then belched out of the gills. This was caught on a palm nut, so it suggests, an omnivorous feeder. I mean, that mouth, to me, looks like it's going to take fish. I'd guess, like a lot of fish around here, it's sort of opportunistic.
The fishermen of the Congo call this an eel, but it's really a type of lungfish, an aptly named creature that can survive for weeks buried in mud.
It's the ability to breathe air that occasionally brings oddities like the lungfish into our sight. And it was precisely this need for air that allowed me to photograph the most bizarre beast I've ever seen when it surfaced in an Amazon lake 20 years ago.
Having finally identified the bizarre-looking animal that I saw many years ago in the Amazon, and pieced together the shocking story behind its unusual appearance, I'm now about to meet one face to face. Piranhas may enjoy a reputation as evil killers around here, but they are far from the top of the food chain. The creature I've come to see eats piranhas, and I've been told they come here to be fed by locals. They are, without doubt, highly adapted killers.
Dolphins. Who'd have thought it? 1,000 miles from the ocean, right up the Amazon River. Freshwater dolphins.
Dolphins are among the Amazon's strangest looking animals. But what about the mysterious saw-backed monster I photographed? How could this have been a dolphin? There is, as I discovered, more to this story than meets the eye. These intelligent animals love to eat fish.
We're in the middle of a frenzy. That one got my thumb. That one got my thumb. Oh dear. Hey! A little bit eager. Wow!
But in pursuit of their favourite food, dolphins sometimes get caught in nets. For some fishermen, they can become a costly nuisance. A fact that helped me get to the bottom of this mystery.
After making many inquiries, I eventually managed to piece together what I think must have happened.
A fisherman, angry at the dolphin for wrecking his net, cruelly mutilates it, then leaves it bleeding and surely destined to die.
It's a story that in some ways I'd rather not have uncovered. Yet there is a happy ending for both of us. The dolphin is exuberantly alive, almost flaunting its strangeness. And I, thankfully, am not losing my marbles.
Indeed, if I've learnt anything from 25 years of chasing river monsters, it's that the truth, while elusive and often complex,
Good grief!
is sometimes every bit as bizarre as the myth.